path for me, then I need to find a path so that I don't waste money, right?
One of the things you spoke on with branding for unemployed was seeking out some of those free classes, like you said, you took some
Exactly.
Spanish classes. That's something that students tend to not do
Right.
because they're like, I'm already in class.
Right.
But I think there's some opportunities, some branches off of that core coursework that you could pick up from those classes as well, that you might
Exactly.
pick up at a library or something. So I think it's something that can be added to the branding for college students as well as others.
Exactly. Case in point, I'll go back to Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs was not a software engineer. He was not a software engineer. When I first, started hearing about Steve Jobs, I thought he was this scientist, in software design. Steve Jobs was not a software engineer. Steve Jobs dropped out in his first year of college. Cal Berkeley. Took a calligraphy class. I learned all about this in his bio. Took a calligraphy class. And that's where he got his interest in designing, right, for Apple. Because in calligraphy, it teaches you artistic and creative ways of writing, right? So what he learned was, hey, I have this, now I can adapt from learning creative ways of writing on now how to design software and how to design the actual devices, in which will contain the software, right? Like the iPad, the iPod, right? So he wasn't this brilliant scientist that, graduated with a master's and a PhD degree, from a computer software program. He got all of that from taking a calligraphy class, right? So you can imagine, exactly. So it speaks to going outside the box, thinking differently, and finding new ways to develop yourself, right? Because when he came back to Apple, that was his second run with Apple. That was his second tour with Apple. And that's after he had discovered, that new way of doing things, right? Because it opened up his mind now. When he came back to Apple, he was even more dangerous than he was the first time around. He was more creative. He had challenged himself. All right? This is the part of the book where I discuss about managing personal risk, right? Managing your personal brand, managing your image, managing yourself as a professional or as an individual, right? To mitigate those crisis moments, right? When you do something totally unexpected, right? Remember we say, God made us not all perfect, but he gave us a mind. He gave us a brain to think, right? And some of us don't think what we should be thinking, right? Mitigate damage to your brand, right? Plan for those what-if moments, right? The what-if moment is, what if, during the course of, let's say for instance, John Edwards, right? Let's look at John Edwards as an example, right? Now he was on this track, he was on this trajectory, right? To become the next president of the United States, right? This is after he finished being John Kerry's running mate in 2004. He was on this wonderful trajectory, right? But he had a moment where he compromised his integrity. He compromised all he worked for, right? Because he had that relationship with his photographer, his campaign photographer, right? Now, suppose John Edwards, as a serious politician, serious professional, sat down and said, I'm on this track. I'm coming to contact with all sorts of people that can damage me, that can create a crisis for me, right?
That's right.
What if I slipped up? What if I did this? What if I made this bad decision, right? We have individuals that are in positions every day. Look into your folders. And I want you to pull out, there's a copy on corruption, sentence near end. And this was a case that it happened a while back. Former Georgia School Superintendent Linda Schrenko, she siphoned off, I think, $600,000 in federal education money to cover a facelift, right, and to finance a campaign, right, because she was running for governor. Now, why would you think that someone in this position, right, would embezzle? It's embezzlement.
You're right.
It's embezzlement. She stole, right? They said siphoned off, but she stole. No matter what language you want to use to soften the thing, she stole $600,000, right? Now, you would think that being in this type of position, being in this type of situation, right, you would have the wherewithal in the sense to say, you know, this is wrong. God, but $600,000, anybody would miss it?
Yeah.
You know, would anybody miss it? You know, because you would think that people in these types of positions are in charge of huge budgets, right? They get all kinds of grants from the state, from the federal government, right? They're in charge of all this money. But just that one moment, just that one slip up, would anybody miss this money? You know, no, I don't need to think that way. I don't need to do that. That's not what I want to do. That's not why I'm in this position, right? It's a what if moment. What if this thought came into my mind? What if I thought that I could get away with it, right? Like OJ said, if I'd done it. You know, prepare for those what if moments. Because we are all, at some point in time, will be, you know, in that position, either as a CFO, as a treasurer, right? As an IT manager, in charge of accounts, in charge of people's passwords and user IDs that you can infiltrate and get social security numbers, right? And then later on it finds out that you were infiltrating personal accounts, using people's social security numbers, you know, to perform indiscretions, right? These are all bad decision making, right? Bad decision making, right? What is your exit strategy, or what is your escape route? How do you plan to get out of that? How do you plan to sway yourself? Because you got to think about it. It's your brand. It's your image, right? It doesn't matter if you're a politician, me as a college professor, you know, fraternizing with a student, you know. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor fraternizing with a patient. If whatever profession you're in, right, there is something that is going to present itself to compromise your integrity. You have to be prepared to say no.
Right.
For the protection of your image and the protection of your brand. And if you are in a position where you think in long-term planning that there's something that might compromise yourself, a pastor of a church, right? Because you're held to a higher standard when you're in a lot of these positions. You're held to a higher standard, and you're not above reproach. But again, you're human, and you're subjected to faults. But how do you say no? How do you reach down inside and say no? But you've got to plan for that, right? You've got to say, okay, I am in this position. Now, I see that there are certain things that present themselves negatively, but I need to be able to say to myself, if this happens, this is the approach I will take, right? This is how I will avoid that crisis to my brand, right? And risk damaging my image, right? Brand auditing, always checking your brand, checking to see if your brand is still strong, if your brand is still loyal, right? Doing those things, getting in touch with people, staying in touch with people, staying in faces of people, preventing the brand crisis, right? And in the bottom I said, it takes time to build a value brand, but only a blink of an eye to destroy it, right? So managing risk to your personal brand is very important. You know, when we talk about moving ourselves through in our professional development and our personal development. Because at the end of the day, we want people to look at us and see us as individuals of integrity and honor, right? We want to be able to uphold those standards and principles that we might swear and take an oath to uphold. We want to be able to do that. But at the same time, we want to be able to prepare ourselves for those what-if moments, right? And know how we're going to get ourselves out of certain situations. Again, digital branding. Everything that you put online is viral. It's on the World Wide Web. You paste pictures on Facebook, or you might write a certain article and you post it online, it's viral. Everybody has access to it, right? Now you find a lot of corporations, before they hire an individual, they will go online. They have certain people within that function or serves in those functions that actually go online to see if they can find you online and to see what kind of image they can find of you online, all right? Just about a month ago, I think there was an elementary school teacher who was let go because she was pole dancing in the club. And those pictures were online. Anybody heard about that? Yeah, bits and pieces of it, right. She was pole dancing in the club, right? Now, I mean, that was a private moment, right?